Right. Okay, enough of that nonsense. The title of this evening's talk is, I'm calling, after much deliberation, why is that funny? Feeling balloons. Oh, no, balloons. Feeling balloons. I think it was misspelled. About feeling balloon. So it's feeling balloons. It's an balloon. And the idea here, I'm just using that as an image because it's difficult to convey in just abstractions or words without some kind of an assist from image, some kind of an image to convey what it is I'm endeavoring to point at. So something I know that everyone has some familiarity with is having intense emotional feelings arise, eruptions that don't seem to have a story behind them, but they're very intense. Sometimes they're more intense than the ones that have some kind of they're coming from some place or triggered by some situation or some person or some event or memory or whatever. Someone is very disrespectful to you or insults you, your feelings get triggered, perhaps even created. That would be an interesting thing to look at. Are feelings something you already have that somebody makes happen, or are they something that you don't have at all that somebody, by something they're doing, cause you to have feelings? Very interesting area. You should apply your awareness there rather than your conceptual analysis. So the idea with a balloon, the kind of balloon I'm talking about keeps changing. So once I think maybe I'm talking about this kind of a balloon, and no, not really. The one I seem to settle on seems to be the kind that you see in cartoons, written cartoons with a little balloon above it, where there's little bubbles that come out of the person's head, and then they're thinking something in there. But this is the kind that doesn't have anything in it, but is actually some kind of experience. There's some kind of feeling that is arising that we sometimes panic a little bit, because here we have something very intense, and we're feeling this maybe strong negativity. We want to do something about that. We want to explain it. We want to find out where it's coming from. We want to find the off switch. I guess I should say it this way, the off switch. We should turn it off. Some of us can kind of do that a little bit. Sometimes we use artificial means, drugs, calling our friend and talking about it, talking through it, going to see our therapist. Possibly you might even come in here to meditate. Although if you were to come in here to meditate to get rid of that, you might find that sitting down, holding very still, will rub your nose right in it, which of course is why we meditate. It's an awareness practice. Not a practice that necessarily solves things or smooths things out, but something that actually gets you to look right where the situation is so that you can begin to understand it deeply. So the experience of the feeling balloon, this situation, could come up, and if it repeats itself, if you have it every day, every morning you feel this way, you might just cave and call it depression. As soon as you call it depression, many of you have heard me say this over and over again. Here's the feeling, depression. Call it depression. It's still under there, scratching around, but we've actually stopped because we are so we don't want to feel that. We don't want to go there. Yet, in order to actually explore that and see what it fundamentally is, it seems to be necessary to do some kind of observation, some kind of looking deeply into it, rather than just looking at the title we put on it. just depression. And then quite often, if it's depression, we might jump from there to some reason that we're depressed. So what I'm endeavoring to say here, and to help you with, if you in fact need help, would be to use this as a post-meditation. So meditation is sit down, whatever arises in meditation, the instruction that I give here, which I'm sure you heard tonight. Did you give it meditation?
Shoka.
Pardon me?
Shoka.
Shoka did. Where is it? Did you read it or give it? You read it. So hold still. All the senses are open. Watch what moves. And if you do that, then the witnessing or the viewing or the seeing, the experiential atmospheric consciousness part of it gets stronger, because you are actually going in and endeavoring to observe what that is, rather than you are going in and as soon as you observe something about it or have some kind of feeling about it, you immediately pounce on it and try to change it into something else. Sitting meditation will help you do that, because by sitting very still, holding the body very still, holding everything still that you possibly can without struggle, what starts to get stronger is the awareness. It's like strengthening the sky instead of the clouds. Clouds are already pretty strong. They're already, moving along, being clouds, being round, being square, being dark, being full of lightning, being whatever. They're just being clouds. But to be able to understand what that's about, we have to back out of the cloud a quarter of an inch and be the sky, if you want to use that kind of imagery or story. So the post-meditation part of this, or after you get up off the cushion, and I'd like to say more before I go any further, in order for this to work, you have to really do a lot of sitting meditation. You're not going to be able to apply this as a conceptual tool unless it is grounded in really strong awareness practice. In other words, what am I saying? Hold very still. Watch what moves. Watch what continues. Watch the mind that keeps throwing up story after story, or commentary after commentary, or I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, I shouldn't have done this, I should do this, I should do more of that, I should do less of this. What is he going to say about what I said? What should I say to him the next time I see him and he starts talking that way? You know what I'm talking about. It's just endless, and we never really get anywhere with it. And the illusion is that we're, just because there's so much movement, the illusion is we're figuring it out. I'm going to figure this out. Figuring this out. Even our body language. It's pretty hard to say, I'm going to figure this out. What you'll do is say, I'm going to figure this out. And what do? We immediately start shutting down and do what? Retreat back into the thought process. Not wrong any more than walking into a closet and closing the door is wrong. It's just something you're doing. So the post-meditation part of this, the way, the thing that has inspired me to even talk about this in this way at all, is to say that when you're off the cushion and you're beginning to experience, maybe waking up in the morning, maybe it could be almost any situation, a combination of things that could happen that could cause you to start to experience negativity without a label or a story or description or a reason for it to even appear. If that happens to you, then my recommendation has been all along is stay with it. Don't reject it by pushing it away. Don't ignore it by explaining it, by attaching some kind of ideas around it. In other words, try to figure it out. And don't shut down on it or distract yourself or go have a beer. Coffee's okay. So what am I saying? What do we do with this? What I'm saying is go to that feeling, go to the texture of that feeling. See if you can find the texture of it, which if you the way you know you're into the texture of the feeling is you feel more confused about it. Okay, negative feelings come up, and when you go into the texture of the feeling, how this feels, in other words, it's like moving your awareness, taking the awareness that wants to escape, wants to bail, wants to jump into some concepts, wants to jump into blaming somebody or something. Well, it must be because, it must be because, it must be, this must be, I've got to figure this out. This is a scene from an aerial perspective, which I hope you eventually are able to do. From the point of view of the sky, it just looks like a tornado. From the point of view of the sky, which isn't much of a point of view, it just looks like bad weather that's circular, going around and around and around, and making a lot of commotion. So when the negativity happens, say tomorrow morning or in a week or in another hour and a half, when that happens, experiment with this a little bit. Look at what your awareness is doing first of all, and watch how you back away from that feeling. You may just back away from it by shutting down, which is called ignorance, or distracting yourself. You may shut down by pushing it away, by going to war with it, by throwing a bunch of negativity at it. And you may ignore that by making up shit. Making up ideas. Blaming. Well, it must be because of this, it must be because of that. And then the other way, the most obvious way and maybe misunderstood way of ignoring is just to label it. So give it a label. It's like putting a lid on a jar. All investigation ceases as soon as you name anything. If you have an emotion like jealousy, as soon as you call it jealousy, all investigation ceases. I'm not saying you shouldn't label something. Don't misunderstand. I'm saying that when you do, be aware that you're shutting down part of it by doing it. You actually are sacrificing some awareness when you do that. I can say it this way. Give it 10 minutes before you give it a name. Give it 38 minutes. Give it some time before you jump into some kind of a strategy that is coming out of your ego, your self-centeredness. What's on the ceiling, you guys? I see both you're looking up at the ceiling. Is there something up there?
A few stink bugs.
A few stink bugs? I don't know. The maid had the day off today. So back to this image of balloons, and back to this image of texture, is when you go into the texture, as soon as you start to feel like you're more confused, this is a sign that probably you're looking in the right place, because you've opened up the tool shed and you see the dead body laying there. In other words, you see the corpse of your experience rotting away. Sorry to use such vivid, smelly images. But it's like that. It's like when you start to get close to what you need to look at, it can be distressing. And I'm saying to you, as if you practice awareness, this means if you're a meditator, if you spend any time sitting down and just sharpening the awareness that sees, that witnesses, you've got to see it yourself. The teaching person, speaking for myself and other teachers who may be not standing in front of you, the teaching person, all that he or she can do is point, go that way. They can't do it for you. You have to do it. If it begins to feel lonely, probably you're doing it right. When I say right, probably you're doing it complete. When I say complete, probably you're actually looking at what you need to look at in order to fundamentally understand what's true, rather than just lay more pancakes on top of it. More labels, more ideas. That may work for a little while, it may work for a lifetime. You may be able to take some really negative thing about your life experience that has been caused by who knows what kind of causes and conditions, and cover that up and get pretty good at it. But nothing lasts, especially cover-ups. Nothing lasts. It's eventually it will come out. That's not a threat, or it's just true. Eventually, it will come out. So going into that texture and feeling that negativity and feeling it, you bring all of your senses in there. See how distressing that feels, and when you do that, then see it as a balloon. That's why I'm saying use this image. This is a post-meditation, meditation in action instruction. I don't give many of them. This is one of them. So see, because there's no words there, and we so desperately want some explanation, when something really feels like an ice pick in our heart, we want to know. We want to know what is that? What is that? What is this? We want to know what that is. And quite often in the world, when there's difficulty like that, we jump into other things to avoid. This is why so many people have drug problems. Not only because the drugs are, because of our culture, our society, and our politics are so damned available, but also because of our very culture itself, the Western world, the 8 worldly dharmas of success and failure and praise and blame and all those polarities and everything are valued as a valid way of working with your life, rather than this particular way, which is called a spiritual path, where you actually transcend the warfare. I don't mean the warfare is gone. I'm saying you transcend it. The warfare may still have to go on for a while. It's called momentum. I sometimes demonstrate it this way. If you see the warfare in your chest, in your heart, in your gut, you see that you're at war with yourself, like this, and you begin to take away the fuel of the warfare. In other words, you're not going to add any more bullshit to it. You're not going to add any more condemnation, any more acceptance, rejection, description. No blaming. No blaming this way, no blaming that way. Don't blame. You can't find the first cause for anything anyway. It starts to look like this, to use images, which I like. One of them stops. Whoops, that's backwards. One of them stops. It surprised me. And the other one kind of keeps going, and this is the part that the reason that makes it so tempting to just give up, because we've done all the work, we've brought our awareness there, we've not we've not pushed, we've not ignored, we've not done anything, and there's this momentum going on there. And this is when it's very difficult to proceed. This is called karma. Karma is a Sanskrit word that means action. If you have action, you're going to have reaction. So these little balloons, maybe, perhaps this won't work for you. Maybe you're not wired in a visual way where this would work, or even if you are, maybe still it just seems too like a silly thing to do. And maybe there's a way that you should work with your negativity, negative feelings with no story, those things, in a way that is different than what I'm saying. This isn't the only way or the right way. The only thing I would recommend as you leave and go somewhere else, I would say try to do it with awareness. It's not a belief system. There's nothing to believe here. I don't believe in Buddhism. I don't disbelieve in Buddhism. If you believe one thing or disbelieve anything, they're both the same. Belief and disbelief are the same thing. You think something is true with no proof, that's belief. If you think something is not true with no proof, that's also belief. And it's not necessary to stop doing that. It's only necessary to know that you do it. It's called awareness. Quite amazing to discover. Take some questions if there are some. Shoka.
Is there proof?
Proof of what?
Of anything?
Probably not. All proof is relative. All evidence is partial. The world of the 8 worldly dharmas of success and failure, praise and blame, good and bad, up and down, back and forth. Life, even life, and it goes as far as life and death. That's another polarity that is not true. Do I believe it's not true? No, what I just say. More? Yes.
2 questions from Sandra in New York and then one from Jay in Saginaw.
Yes.
So from Sandru, he asks, sometimes I label you as Sokuzan.
Stop it.
Have I just capped you off?
Not as long as you know it's a label. It's just a name.
Aren't you clearer when I recognize you are an expression of mind?
Me?
Aren't you
you
clearer?
Isn't a person clearer when they realize that it's an expression of mind?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I should be looking in there. Yes. Now that I see you there. Yes, I think that's true.
His next question.
I'm ready.
With regard to what we ask, what is that? Is that actually mind once we transcend it?
What we transcend is the separation and the polarity. And it's the teaching of something being mind or mind only is just a way of talking about mind, so it'll get us closer, it'll get us to be less fascinated by our world, by all the seductions and all of the promises of success that our world lays out. So it seems to be necessary to, as it says in the Samdhi Nirmochana Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra, and the teachings of Vasubandhu, other teachers, that there's just mind. It's just a way of talking about it, so that you will look and see that everything, can't have anything without it being just mind. And we're not disrespecting the obvious polarity. We're not getting rid of the polarity. Another question?
From Jay.
Yeah.
From Jay in Saginaw. He asks, is calling love by a name ignoring it?
It depends on how much attachment's there. Anytime you label anything, there's some distancing from it. That's a name, a word that everyone, when I say just about everyone, has some difficulty saying, well, what is love? What is that? What is love? What is it? There's the kind of love that grasps and wants and craves and demands and owns and possesses. It's not exactly the kind of love we're talking about. That's passion. That's passion, aggression, ignorance, attachment, fixation. It's all the downside of that whole thing. Actual love is, in the ultimate sense, wouldn't be grasping at anything. It would be just appreciation. There would be no success or failure, plus or minus going on there. Yes, Michael.
Is belief and our perception the same or different?
Well, I perceive you're wearing a blue shirt. I perceive it. I don't believe it, nor do I disbelieve it. So you tell me.
Well, it seems to me, his question about if I say you are Sokuzan or call you Sokuzan,
Yes.
that seems to be if I believe you are Sokuzan, you're cutting things off. And if I just perceive that who you are,
What's your point?
are they the same or are they different?
Both. You thought you were going to trick me, didn't you? Yes.
A question from Jigme up in Traverse City.
I know him.
He says, when I include everything during my sitting practice, feelings become more diffuse and transparent and eventually disappear. How can I work with the texture of feelings when this happens?
That sounds fine. Don't do anything with it. It can change though, so there's no promise. Once it's a very tricky area. Once we start to feel like we're making some headway with something, we're buying back into the relative world of success and failure again. One of the ways you can tell how I've said this many times. One of the ways you can tell, find where your ego is notice if you're insulted by someone criticizing you, or if you're fluffed up or puffed up by someone complimenting you. If nothing happens, if you just hear what they're saying and you understand what's happening there, then there may not be much self-centeredness going on. Usually what happens there, you see the motivation behind what why the person is saying that, why they're complimenting you or why they're criticizing you, rather than you have some self-centeredness that is somehow being offended or being fluffed up. Very interesting area. I'd be happy to experiment on you if you want me to criticize you so you can find out where your ego's at. Just raise your hand and I will nail you. You're really ugly and you're also fat. How's it feel?
Feels true.
Feels what?
True.
Interesting. Want me to go the other direction? You're also a very close friend and I love you. How's that
It's
feel?
true too.
Yeah. Not bad, huh? Thank you for your participation. More?
Oh. Yes. Another question from Sandra. Isn't there a challenge when we think you are out there and I'm working to transcend the me that's seeing it?
Read that again.
Isn't there a challenge
Darn psychiatrist.
when we think you,
Mm-hmm.
capital U, Y-O-U,
Y-O-U, got it.
are out there and I'm working to transcend the capital me
Yes.
that's seeing it?
Hmm. What was the question?
Isn't there a challenge? Isn't there a challenge?
Yes, there is. It's a challenge. There is a challenge. But we don't give up. We continue to work. And any time anyone is practicing, strengthening the awareness, trying to understand fundamentally what this world is all about, this world of crazy warfare and pushing and pulling and attacking people, and it's just astonishing how difficult it gets. And that kind of dynamic may show up for you, and some other kind of dynamic may show up. Something else totally different than what Sandra is talking about. So anytime anything shows up, don't do anything with it. Don't fluff it up more, and don't tamp it down, and don't look away. Distract yourself from it. So this way your awareness can sink down into that, so you can see what it is for yourself. So you can awaken yourself. Further questions? Sheldon?
It seems like everything that arises has some kind of feeling with it.
Yes.
And sometimes some of that stuff really hurts. Some of the things that arise really hurt.
Yeah. Did it hurt what I said to you?
A little
Okay. Did it make you feel really good what I said to you?
bit. Yeah.
Go ahead.
All those things, they all seem to have an instant story.
What do I call that?
Awareness.
Awareness. Seeing that everything has an instant story is awareness. You aren't going to be able to see that very clearly unless there's a strong awareness practice, or unless you're for the last 3 lifetimes before you got here you spent in a monastery. That'll give you a free pass. In this lifetime you can play video games or design them. Go ahead.
Is there any way that we could even know whether we're just experiencing that, or
Experiencing
whether
what?
we're adding on to it.
You'll know when you're not adding. What happens is, it's not that you stop adding. This is a little bit further down the road. It's not that you stop adding, you just watch the additions, you watch the subtractions, you watch the shutting down, you keep looking and watching and looking and watching and observing and seeing this come and go with as little adding to that as possible, with as little fueling of that passion, aggression, ignorance, with as little fueling of that as possible. And then eventually the insight that arises is, there isn't anyone here. There is no one who's adding. There is no one who's subtracting. There's no one who's going to war. The war is, whatever is happening, it has been said in the teachings, is self-existing. It just functions. It has an apparent separation because it's so astonishingly not separate from anything. So it sounds like it's a contradiction. Everything is without a self, everything is without an other, yet it's self-existing. What's that about? Yes, sir.
Could I paraphrase what you said by saying, don't attach a string to that balloon?
That's too cute, don't do that. Don't do that. There was already a string on it. This young man right here by the name of Kevin.
But what is it that sees when that sees the same feelings that Sheldon was feeling? Is that also ego? When you
It's just an observing, it's just the observer part. And then but what comes up with that is some kind of stickiness around some kind of insecurity around it. So we're always going to have some of that. Sheldon's going to feel, because we've known each other a long time, and it's going to feel pretty secure here no matter what happens, more than likely. So, but if this same thing were to happen somewhere at a coffee shop or something, and somebody remarked to him and criticized him in the way that I did, was critical of him, it's probably not going to feel, probably going to be a lot more difficult. It might even bring up some warfare. You might turn around and say, yeah, and you got a big nose too. You wouldn't do that, would you? You might. Is that what you're asking about, or?
well, I'm wondering what is it my ego that is getting upset and defensive for Sheldon? Or appreciative?
Anytime you get defensive and upset, there's
That's
some
it.
self-centeredness going on there of some kind. I'm not saying that you're not completely devoted to getting rid of really bad political figures, by carrying signs. I'm not saying that, but it's still self-centeredness, unless it's coming out of awareness. And if it's coming out of awareness, then it could show up anyway. We don't know how it's going to show up. But the one, the person, the consciousness that has transcended this separation is completely at the mercy of separation, and is it completely liberated from it at the same time. That's why it's so difficult. That's why you can't think your way into this. You think your way into this, it's a cave of demons, and you'll be caught. The freedom is without any reference point. Go ahead. I like this part where Kevin looks down at the carpeting. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I can't stop thinking about the last thing that you said.
Well, go ahead and ask about that then. That's fine.
That just obliterated my question. I don't know where it went.
So you were talking about the feeling that you had about wanting to say be protective of someone.
Oh yes. So
Okay.
how do I see the difference from the defensiveness or protection for another being that comes out of awareness, or that comes out of a sense of self-centeredness?
Why would you want to do that? So you could do the right one.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To stop being that's
Aha.
also self-centered.
Yes, it is. That's
Is
why.
it?
That's why the activity needs to come out of in our tradition here, to use the fancy word, needs to come out of jnana or prajna or wisdom. It has to come out of the wisdom mind. That's what this guy, this carving chunk of wood represents from 2,500 years ago. That's what that person, that incredible human being, discovered. Everything is dependently arisen, and he began teaching that. And those who were ready to hear that teaching heard it. Everything is dependent. Anytime you see anything, it's dependent on everything else for its apparent singularity or identity, no matter what it is. To realize that is liberation. And that liberation won't be your idea of freedom. It'll be actual freedom.
Isn't it self-centered to even step foot on this path?
Of course it is. You can't step on the path unless you want something, which is desire. You want this. But then it slowly gets fine-tuned down to I want to attain enlightenment. I want to understand the truth fundamentally for myself. I want to know what this is. I want to know what this is. This place that I showed up in my case, over 75 years ago, and how this all came about, I have no idea. But here I am. Here this is, and there's a desire to understand what that is. What does it mean to be a living being, rather than just what school, what college should I go to, or how can I make the most money, or how can I, where can I get a cheap facelift that still is a good high value. That's the one I want. I'm kind of funny that way. I want to pay very little, but I want real high quality. Yeah, like that. So of course there's always that kind of self-centeredness where we want. But as we persist on the path, and that's why these teachings are so amazing, because if you follow them, if you practice them, if you observe them, and if you follow and understand the teaching of the three jewels, the Buddha is the example of someone who is sane. The Dharma is the truth that he taught. Everything is dependently arisen. There is not a single separate thing anywhere. And the Sangha, or the community of people. This, for a few more minutes, 10, 15 minutes, is Sangha. Even if you leave and never study Buddhism again, your life, even if you haven't understood anything here. Understanding is way overrated. People that understand things are really irritating. Yes?
Another question from Sandru.
I bet.
He asks, why would we worry, fret? You are part of mind. It really hurts, but why fight?
We want something different. This is why we fight, because whatever is there, we object to it. We don't want it that way. It's the Four Noble Truths, isn't it? I think. Is it? You're a Buddhist monk. Tell me, is it the Four Noble Truths? Life is suffering, the cause of desire. The goal is the path. The path that no. How was it?
The goal in the path.
The goal and the path. Thanks. I never can remember that very well. Gets worse the older I get. Yes.
That seems pretty important, that that when we get poked in the feelings, it gives us a good look at our ego.
Yeah.
How can we use that to get more clarity about the ego is what's coming up?
Don't agree with it. Don't object to it. And don't distract yourself or look away. Those are the three: aggression, passion, and ignorance. And the way we do that is to see the way we keep pushing on some things, the way we keep explaining other things, And the way we keep distracting ourselves or moving back or going and doing something else or, changing the subject. We all know someone, you're probably not one of them if you're in here, but we all know someone who, when you talk to them, will talk to you a little bit, as long as you're on their topic or their subject or what they want to talk about. But if you change the subject or go into something that you want to talk about, that they will actually look away from you. They might even, their whole body language will change, and they might even say, "What's for dinner?" In the middle of your sentence, as if you're supposed to fix it for them. Or they might change the subject and say, "You still going out with that same girl or that same guy or you still have that same job?" And it'd be a totally different situation. It's kind of surprising sometimes. But if you know the person well, you kind of see that, yeah, that's the way they function. They're okay for a while. They're good at exchanging, but as soon as it starts to go somewhere where they don't want to go, then they shut down. They may shut down by interrupting you. Every time you start to say something, they never wait for the period. They don't know what a period is. They only know hyphens. You know people that don't. Anytime you don't. I give up. Yes. Not really, I didn't give up. It was a lie.
So you said don't push away, don't
Or
grasp,
see if you
don't ignore.
see if you do. If I say don't do that, I say don't push, don't pull, don't look away. But I know that it's impossible not to do that. So, but when I say that, then I know that then your awareness will come to see, how much do I push? How much do I add? How much do I distract myself?
But there's no conceptual way to work that without it actually becoming a thought process, right? I mean, you can't, like you said, you can't not add.
Do you need to leave?
Yeah, I gotta get a tissue, is that right?
Okay, go ahead. Sure. He needs to go out. We've had difficulty before. So go ahead. Sorry.
So if we're not able to do this conceptually, if we're not able to conceptually not push away or grasp or ignore things, how is that happening?
I heard what you said, but I'm not sure what the inquiry is exactly.
We can't think our way into not grasping or pushing away.
Seems that way.
And how is it happening if it's not something that we're doing, that we're not thinking of?
It's just all kinds of things are happening that you don't have to think about. Mind is consciousness is amazing. We have very little say so. Just like if we had a lot of control, we would just not think bad thoughts. I would just say, just be happy. You say, oh, okay, I'll just be happy. There are people who actually think that that's because they are pretty happy. They think, what's the big problem with people? All upset about everything. Man, just, relax, be happy, as they get into their Mercedes. Just be happy, man. Why don't you just get a job? So there's so many things that are going on that are I have the control. I can pick this up and I can put this over here. But as you've heard me say many times, I did not make this. I did not actually make these hands. So I would say back up a little bit and see how much control you had in the first place, even getting here. Would you have picked this particular lifetime? Would you have picked that mother and father? Would you have picked to be born in that place or at this time with this kind of a thought process, with this kind of intelligence? So that's why awareness is so important to on the very moment that you're in, which maybe it's on the cushion, maybe it's in this room, maybe it's sitting in this chair, maybe it's driving home later on this evening. Just be where you're at. Just be there. Sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of touch. 5 sense fields are there. They're always in the present. But quite often what we do is we ignore all of those and we go into the thought process, the discursive thought, where there's some kind of an illusion that we have some kind of control over something. Which of course creates what? A controller identity. Either a controller identity that's having pretty good luck at controlling, or a controller identity that is failing. Still an identity. And it's still unreal. Yes.
More questions from Sandru.
Sandru.
He asks, wasn't that just part of mind? You were moving the stick
Yeah,
and then some scars?
it is. Not separate. You can't find a separate thing. So conceptually what you're saying is true, but to realize that is probably not to even comment on it. And to realize it is probably no longer to even watch my videos. And of course, I want you to continue to watch the videos. But on the other hand, it's what I'm talking about is trying to understand what this is. If you understand, then there's nothing left to do. Yes?
I've heard it put in the past that ego is how we navigate the physical world. So is that true or not true?
Yeah, there's something to that. It's both true and not true. So we actually operate. This is my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, Tibetan Buddhist meditation master and scholar who died in 1987. One of the things that he said, remarking, and I have to paraphrase it, I can't quote him, but saying the whole idea of democracy is probably not going to work too well, because it's a lot of self-centered egos all getting together and voting on the relative pluses and minuses of everything. There's no way you can see clearly what all of that is. So yeah, it's a navigation. We have some people who are very successful, like I was saying. We have some people who are just doing fine. They really don't understand why some people turn to crime or other, so-called dark ways of getting happiness. There's some pretty dark ones. But there's no way to see the original first cause for any of that. But what you can see is you can find out who this is, who you are. Right now, you can find out who you are. And I can tell you who you are conceptually, but you have to realize it yourself. I can yell this. I may yell it. I'd go up on top of the roof first, though. I'd crawl out one of those skylight windows up there that Kevin just put in on the roof. Not separate. Who you are, your identity, your very ego. You don't have to get rid of it. It's unreal. It's like everything else, like a dream, like a story, like a stage play, as Shakespeare had it. Unreal. It's there, but it's unreal. It's like a really intense movie, like Star Wars or The Matrix or you name it, any movie. It's like it's there and it's real and it affects us even emotionally, but we know it's not real. Whereas this, we think this is actually solid and has some kind of weight.
From Sandru, another couple of comments regarding his last question about wasn't that just part of mind?
Yes.
And then his comment was not thinking about it. And then the next one, when you say you'd probably stop watching my videos, and he says, I love you, why stop?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm looking at you too. I love you too. Further questions? We're right at 9 o'clock. Is there anything on there? Did Terry ever tune in to us?
I'm not.
Not that you know of. Anyone else out there? Okay. Final questions here in the Zendo? Now's your big chance. Okay, thank you so much.
We'll dedicate the merit in the back of your red chant books. And also a reminder about our donation boxes in the hallway as well as online. Please go to our website and give us all your money.
Penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho Sanji Shizon Busa Mokosa the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, its buildings, garden, and all adjoining areas from any and all dark or negative energy. Remove and dissolve any negative energy or devices. Fill everything and everyone with light. Please shield and protect with light our teachers, monks, students, and all practitioners of the Dharma, our families and friends from negative forces and energy from now on. Help us to realize the truth of the Buddha's teachings.